Welcome back. We start from India, where violent protests have continued against the controversial citizenship law. Students from across the country have joined the protests after police stormed the Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi. This report has more.
In India, violent protests have continued against the controversial citizenship law. Students from across the country have joined the protests after police stormed the Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi.
The police started beating us and abusing us in a very communal way. I believe in a certain faith. So I said, Ya Allah. And they started saying, you guys are terrorists.
Police say over 3,000 protesters have been detained in the northeastern state of Assam. Demonstrations were held in Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Varanasi, Ahmedabad, Lucknow and Kolkata. Members of nearly 18 student unions gathered outside Mumbai University to protest against the act.
We are protesting here right now. We are protesting against the bill which the government has passed, which is discriminatory for one particular community. It's against the Muslims. It's against the ethos of India. It's against the secular ideas of India.
Meanwhile, Indian Supreme Court will hear the matter pertaining to violence at Jamia Millia University and Aligarh Muslim University today. The protests left 6 people dead in Assam before spreading to other parts of the country.
In a related development, Pakistan's parliament approves a resolution against India's controversial citizenship law. It seeks to grant nationality to only non-Muslim migrants.
The resolution said India's move violates international law as it is discriminatory against Muslims. It said the minorities are being persecuted in India. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi expressed the Indian government is dividing its people on religious lines. He urged the US to sanction Indian Home Minister Amit Shah for his leading role in the contentious legislation. Qureshi also criticized the police crackdown on students protesting against the law in New Delhi. He called for an end to violence against Muslims.
For more on this story, we are joined by Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal. Now, Mr. Faisal, Indian citizenship law has sparked countrywide protests. Is this law targeting Muslims specifically?
Yes, thank you very much. The law is extremely discriminatory and targets the Muslims. And it is a violation of Indian obligations that it has to prevent all forms of discrimination under religion and ethnicism, all the covenants that have been signed in Geneva and the Human Rights Charter. So it is not something that only Pakistan is condemning. The Prime Minister has condemned it. We have done it. But it is within India, there are a lot of voices of concern on this issue, and they continue to be raised, and they would be raised further because the Hindutva ideology is not acceptable neither to the Muslims of Pakistan, to Pakistan or the Ummah.
Now, the UK, US and Canada have issued travel warnings for people visiting India's northeast. Do you see India as a dangerous country to visit right now?
Yes, it is. We call it, it is not Hindustan anymore. We call it Lynchistan. And it is one of the most dangerous places, what is going on to all the minorities. The Hindutva fascist ideology that the Indian government is following is a grave danger to itself and to the neighboring countries and to the entire world. This has been reiterated repeatedly by my Prime Minister, by my Foreign Minister, and by the spokesperson also.
Mr. Faisal, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now, moving on, a court finds a former member of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party guilty of raping a teenager. Kuldeep Singh Senar is expected to be sentenced later this week. This came to light last year when the victim attempted suicide, accusing the police of not investigating her claims. In July, on her way to a court, a truck crashed into her car. 2 of her relatives were killed in the crash, but the victim narrowly escaped. Meanwhile, India's propaganda network has been exposed by a Brussels-based NGO. It says the network is designed to influence decision-making at the UN. EU Disinfo Lab said the network of over 260 fake sites and think tanks operate across 65 countries. It said the network's purpose is to disseminate propaganda against Pakistan. The network is also found involved in anti-Pakistan lobbying in Europe. The report traced the websites to an Indian company, the Srivastava Group. The UN Security Council will meet today to discuss the worsening situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The council has been convened at China's request for the first time since a similar gathering in August. The meeting is being held after Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi wrote to the Security Council about potential escalation in tensions. In a note to UNSC, China said the request is made due to seriousness of the situation in the region. It said Beijing will like to echo the request of Pakistan and seek a briefing of the Council on the situation of Kashmir. In August, India annexed the decades-old special status of Kashmir with an amendment in the Constitution. The New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout in the valley have entered 135th day. For more on this, we are joined by Mr. Salman Bashir, a former Foreign Secretary and High Commissioner of Pakistan in India. Thank you for your time. Now, Mr. Bashir, China has approached the UNSC once again to discuss the worsening situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Firstly, tell us what is the importance of today's session?
Well, my understanding is that, of course, the Kashmir issue has been on the agenda. There was, as you know, a consultative meeting of the council some time ago. The situation has not improved, actually worsened. I think what is really the purpose for this meeting, which we hope will take place, although I understand there are still consultations going on in this respect. But the key thing is the situation on the line of control, which has been violated time and again by the Indians. In recent days, it has, there's an added ominous dimension because the Indian army posture on the line of control is now alarming. It is offensive. And the Foreign Minister of Pakistan has written to the UN Secretary General and the Security Council that there is real apprehension that the Indians may be up to some sort of misadventure across the LOC. So what is being sought is a proper briefing by the UN Military Observers Group of India and Pakistan to the Council. It is important to sort of stem this thing before it erupts in a manner that becomes uncontainable. And I think that is what the consultations in New York are about currently.
Now, Mr. Bashir, you mentioned that the situation in Kashmir, Indian-occupied Kashmir, hasn't improved. Do you think today's session can help raise the pro-Kashmir argument at international level and pressurize India to resolve the outstanding issue?
Well, that is certainly the hope of Pakistan. It is certainly the hope of the Kashmiris. It is the hope of every right-minded person who has had faith in the UN Charter, in the UN system. But we know from reality, the fact is that, of course, it adds, the profile is already there. I mean, the profile of the issue as far as the international community is concerned is very much there. But the effectiveness, I mean, the question is how effective can the Council be? It can only at this point in time, I think, exercise some sort of a moral influence to restrain Indians and to, the curfew, the lockdown in Kashmir is now plus 130 days. So it is just getting from bad to worse. So, of course, the international community, and especially the major powers who are permanent members of the Security Council, definitely have a duty and a responsibility to do something about it. But we see that these major powers, barring few, are still reluctant to exercise the influence that they have, and they have immense influence over the Indians.
Thank you, Mr. Salman Bashir, former Foreign Secretary and High Commissioner of Pakistan in India, for joining us and telling us that we'll see how the session goes in the day-to-day. Moving on, the first ever UN Global Refugee Forum has opened in Geneva to find new approaches towards refugee-related issues. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has arrived in Switzerland to co-convene the forum. PM Khan will articulate the nation's perspective and contribution towards Afghan refugees. The Foreign Office said Pakistan is co-convening the forum in recognition of its generosity, compassion towards Afghans for the past 40 years. The forum is the first major meeting on refugees in the 21st century and is being jointly hosted by UNHCR and Switzerland.
We're starting a new decade. During the last 10 years, refugee numbers surged to 26 million, and solutions are hard to find. We must reverse this. We need a new deal for refugees and those hosting them.
The other conveners of the forum are Turkey, Costa Rica, Ethiopia, and Germany. Moving on, Russia and China have proposed to ease UN sanctions against North Korea. In a draft resolution, both countries suggested to relax curbs if Pyongyang commits to Security Council resolutions on denuclearization. The two countries argue that a relaxation of some sanctions will encourage the North to resume denuclearization talks. Meanwhile, the US has dismissed the proposal, calling it a premature relief. Officials said the UN should reject the proposal as Pyongyang is threatening to conduct an escalated provocation and refusing to meet the talks. Earlier, President Donald Trump said he will be disappointed if something was in the works in North Korea. He said the US was watching activities in the country closely. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. The US has sanctioned two senior South Sudanese officials on accusations of delaying a unity government. Minister of Cabinet Affairs and Minister of Defense were blacklisted for their role in perpetuating the conflict by obstructing the peace process. The sanctions freeze any US assets held by the officials and prohibit Americans from doing business with them. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the South Sudanese deserve leaders who are committed to a peaceful political transition. In 2018, President Salva Kiir and his former deputy Riek Machar agreed to form a government by November 2019, but the implementation of the pact was stalled due to financial constraints. The 15th anniversary of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and earthquake is only weeks away. But in Thailand, hundreds of the disaster's victims still haven't been identified. This report has all the details.
Police Colonel Khamareen Hassini was part of the disaster victim identification team, constituted in Thailand after the 2004 tsunami. But the operation ended in 2006 and Hassini was assigned to work elsewhere. Now, he's returned to his old beat, saying he was compelled to do so.
I think there are still some victims' relatives, both near and far, who still hope of finding their lost loved ones. However, a lot of communication channels have been shut down.
The Thai government was unable to identify 340 of the tsunami's victims, but it still has personal belongings taken away from the bodies, meaning there's still hope.
I think if we are determined enough and reactivate our operations once more, some of the 340 unidentified bodies could be identified.
The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami was caused by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Indonesia. It killed around 230,000 people, wiping some communities off the map in seconds.
Researchers say they've determined a cave painting in Indonesia, which is the earliest known pictorial record of storytelling. The painting in question was discovered in 2017 by a group of Australian archaeologists on the island of Sulawesi. More on the world's oldest fiction in this report.
Like many other cave paintings, this one depicts humanoid figures hunting animals. What makes it unique is that it dates back around 44 millennia.
The result was yesterday's finding. There are 4 samples. They are mainly above 40,000 years old. The exact dating for the oldest one is 43,900 years old. That was found around the depiction of the pig.
The hunters shown in the painting have animal heads. Such figures can be found in ancient cultures around the world. Researchers say this is the oldest evidence of humans' ability to imagine supernatural being.
This is one form of historical heritage of how our ancestors had actually understood literacy, meaning what they see and what they experienced are being poured in a form of rock art.
The painting's age was determined by researchers from Indonesia's National Research Center for Archaeology. Some of them hypothesized the cave could have been a religious site in the prehistoric era.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has launched a massive satellite into orbit from Florida to provide communications in the Asia-Pacific region. The rocket carried the satellite into the air above Cape Canaveral. After a successful launch, the Falcon 9 booster came back to Earth, landing on a drone ship in the Atlantic. The satellite reached geostationary transfer orbit minutes later. Recovery boats were deployed off the coast to catch the 2 halves of the fairing, but narrowly missed them. The company said a team is working to recover them for potential use on a future flight.
Stage separation. There we go.
Japan says it will continue a dialogue to resolve trade issues with South Korea. Senior Japanese and South Korean trade officials met for the first time since Tokyo imposed controls on Seoul's exports in July. Japan's Trade Minister Hiroshi Kajiyama said a better understanding of bilateral management of export control systems has been reached. He said the next round of trade talks between the 2 countries will be held in Seoul in the near future.
We were also able to discuss about updating and improving each country's export control system. In order to resolve our issues, we hope to continue our dialogue and communication on export controls. We are planning to hold the next meeting for trade talks in Seoul in the near future.
Aviation giant Boeing has announced it will temporarily halt production of its troubled 737 MAX airliner in January amid safety concerns. This comes after US regulators made it clear the plane would not be quickly certified to return to the skies. In a statement, the business said it has decided to prioritize the delivery of stored aircraft as a result of an ongoing evaluation. A US congressional hearing was told that aviation regulators knew of the risks of further accidents after the first crash in Indonesia last year. The 737 MAX has been grounded since March after that crash, and another in Ethiopia killed over 346 people. Asian stock markets are trading higher amid upbeat sentiments by a recent Phase 1 trade deal reached between the US and China. The Shanghai Composite is trading nearly 1.5% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng has gained over 1% as shares of digital app Meitu rocketed over 8%. Seoul's Kospi is also trading over 1% higher amid shares of Samsung Electronics surge over 3%. Bucking up, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 has also gained nearly 0.5%. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.